you this time.
Good, good. Okay, I hit the record. We're recording again. Continue your thought, Karen. I'm sorry for the interruption on that when it fell off.
That's all right. Uh, we were in the wrong room for Chris before. um, Now don't see. Look, Chris has the face of a person who's taking a bridge. He must not be able to hear me. Um, anyway, I really had no idea that what I was and what I did was different from anybody else. I assumed we all did that. We were all thinking about, well, Karen said this, and oh, they're probably all, thinking, what a terrible person I am, and and uh, then I, Karen, was thinking about somebody in the lunchroom because I was doing at a school at the time, and said something, and I mean, sometimes the rumination can go on for 2 or 3 days, and I mean, what a ridiculous thing, what a terrible life, to be all caught up in, like Chris was saying, um, you know, seeing and reading people other than how they intended, or even if they intended that way, it's not necessary to be hurt by it, like you said, Samantha. I mean, I realize that I've gotten pretty tough skinned to certain people, but I'm not tough skinned to my siblings. I'm not tough skinned to my brother. I mean, my sons. Um, you know, I, it's just it's just a way of being that I've been working on no longer being for a really long time, and need to continue to do that.
You know what's interesting about that, Karen? When I realized this at a younger age, and I'm not sure why I was able to do that, or I just was. But I realized back when I was a teenager and in high school that I just kind of came to this realization that what I had going on in my head was basically the same kind of thing everybody else was doing. They were so worried about what everybody else thought that they couldn't they were just that's the issue. They were and so when I realized that everybody else was so worried about what everybody else thought, I realized that nobody gave a shit what I did or didn't do. you know and what was funny about that is, by letting go of what I was worried about, then I wasn't worried about any of that anymore. And I mean, I'm not going to say anymore, because I was still young and I still had a lot of things that I was trying to work through, and particularly in relationships, because in relationships, it was just, you're that much closer with that person, and you're so worried about what they expect from you, and what, and whether or not you're living up to that expectation. And I don't know why we do that to ourselves. We tend to, but I think that it is good that at this point now you can realize that, okay, I this is what I'm doing, and you can work through that. Because for the longest time, I didn't even realize some of the things that I was doing to make my own life difficult, and uh, I feel like the biggest thing, I mean, it's so hard to. Oh, let me give you an example. Okay, this is it's kind of back on something else that you mentioned with Chris, and him talking about possibly leaving our discussion, and and you saying that you might be feeling abandoned by that, or taking umbrage for what he was saying. And when we started this book, we lost a few people. There's people that jumped off of this discussion, and because they didn't feel comfortable talking about what we're talking about for their own personal reasons. And when at first, when the people were saying what they were saying about why they were leaving, I was like, wait a second, I'm trying to convince them, like in my head, I'm like coming up with all these arguments why they're wrong. You're wrong. You're leaving and you're losing out. That was what I was like. And I was feeling a little bit on that hurt side, like, really, you really are going to leave all because of whatever, and, but once I kind of worked through that just a little bit, I realized, it didn't have anything to do with me. It wasn't they were leaving me. It was that they were not comfortable with what we were going to be talking about, for one. And that's okay, because everybody has their own needs in their life and their own wants, desires, all of those kinds of things. And not everybody's going in the same direction that I'm going, and I can't expect everyone to either. Just because I want to go down this path, I can't expect that everybody else who is near or around or I'm friends with or whatever is interested in those same things, because they're not, and I get that. But it took me a minute, to realize that, okay, I've got to let them go and not be hurt by the fact that they're leaving, because they need to live their own lives. I mean, we all have to live our own lives. And if we are constantly being hurt because someone else wants to live their own lives, then we're opening ourselves up for being what was the word I was going to say? Is that if we're hurt, allowing for ourselves to be hurt because of what they're doing, then it goes the other way. We open ourselves up for the other way too, that by what they're doing can hurt us too. Or what was I gonna yeah, are you getting what I'm saying? It's like, if we can allow them to live their lives and be who they are, then we can be okay with living our lives and letting them do what they do. You know what I'm saying? Even if they're upset about it, we have to be, it's like, does that make sense?
Yeah, let me give an example with what I said, like relating to what I wrote. So when I wrote that, I was like looking for certain things, but then when I contemplated it myself, I was like, oh, those are the areas I'm looking to grow in, and it wasn't like really intended for someone else. I was realizing that I personally needed to look at certain areas that I needed to grow in, because I'm like progressing on certain things that I need to grow in, and it actually wasn't related to what was going on in the group. It was stuff that I was looking for to try to install in my own life. So it was things I needed to do. So it wasn't like about you guys, and it definitely wasn't personal. It wasn't intended personal at all. Like, so if that came across, I totally apologize. But like, it was just like stuff stirring up in my own soul, and like things that I felt that I needed to work on that was calling me.
Yeah, I completely get that. And I think a lot of times that we know we need to do something, and we know we need to make a change or add something to our lives, or we need to something. And we're not doing it ourselves because we're not motivated to do it. And so we push it out on other people, like they need to make us do it. You know what I'm saying? And I completely get that. And but like, on this kind of another side, it's like, okay, so now my daughter-in-law and my son just moved back with us with their baby, and they moved in with us. And I did a little bit of like inner preparedness for this, because I knew that we have completely different ways of living within our own households. I mean, I could see by going to their house that they don't organize their house the same way I organize my house, right? And so I could see that there was going to be those differences between us when we moved in together. But I made this kind of thought process agreement with myself where I said, okay, if I come across something that they have done or changed or they're not doing or whatever that doesn't align with what I like to do, what I like to see, what I like to do, is that I'm not going to sit here and put back on them and say, look, you have to do blah, 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 because this is the way I want it. You know, I just told myself, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is that if we walk in and the trash is full because somebody else has filled it all up, I'm not going to sit here and say, go empty the trash. I'm going to say, oh, I've noticed that the trash is full. I don't like that it's full. And so therefore I am going to take the trash out, you know, or like we have a cat now, that came with them. You notice that the kitty jumped up here on the rail. I'm not a big cat person, but and one of the reasons why is I don't like litter boxes. They stink, they're gross, they're blah, 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 you know. But when I'm like, I noticed that the cat box is full, I'm not going to sit here and go, you need to empty the cat box. I'm just going to freaking do it because I don't like it. I don't like that it's dirty, right? So instead of like creating all of these upset things why I might get upset about that other person, is I just handle it, you know? I mean, so much of the time we do exactly the opposite. So we see something that we don't like and we push it out on someone else like they're the problem, when in reality, that issue is coming up inside of us and we are the ones that need to handle it to make it be what we want for our own lives.
Good to have you with us, Chris. We'll look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks a lot, you guys. I love you guys. I'm headed out to work now, so I'm dressing and gonna try to eat a bagel here before I go. I love you guys. Okay.
Love you too, Chris. You have a great day, and
Thanks a lot.
Sorry I didn't realize you were trying to leave.
No, I have to work at 10:15, so I'm helping with a big order this morning. Okay. Thank you very much.
You too, Chris. Bye-bye.
Right,
did you say 10:15? Are you on Central Time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, you're already late. It's 11. Yeah.
Almost.
I think Indiana's the state where the time zone deal goes right down the middle of the state. Is that right?
No, it does kind of a weird thing in southern Indiana, where part of southern Indiana is on Central Time, but the rest of Indiana is on Eastern Time. And I think that maybe it does a similar thing up in northwest Indiana, where part of maybe Gary is on Central Time or something. I'm not sure where the time zone changes up there. When we lived in Boswell, Indiana, which is about 6 miles from the Illinois state line up in northern Indiana, my phone would do this weird thing where it would switch back and forth depending on which way the wind was blowing, I guess. I don't even know. And it was kind of weird. But we were in Eastern Time, and just sometimes our phones would be like, no, you're not. You're in Central Time. We were like right there on that. Woo! What time is it? I don't know.
I've never had to think about it too much, at least since the last 100 years I've been living in Arizona, where we don't even change. You know, we just keep the same, which is weird because then I have to think all summer I'm on Pacific time, even though I'm not. But I worked in a phone room one time, and I talked to people, and I think it was Indiana. And I would talk to people, and they'd say, you know, my date didn't show up for an hour, and then I realized that's because they're in the part of the state that's on a different, you know, I mean, they lived like two streets from each other, and here they were in different time zones. And I thought, how weird is that?
I don't know where that would have been. It had to have been in southern Indiana somewhere, but it's down there a ways. Because when we used to have friends that lived south of Salem, which is like the lower third of Indiana, and they were on Central Time, and we in northern Indiana were in Eastern Time. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where that time zone change is, but yeah, I guess I could see that would be a possibility if you live down there. Is it because I think it kind of does this diagonal thing through the state? If I'm, you know, I don't know. I could be way wrong. I'm not sure. Of course, we used to be like you, is that we did not change. We just always stayed, you know, our time stayed the same, and the states on either side of us swapped back and forth, you know. So
yeah. Now it's just Hawaii and Arizona, I believe, that does that. That's a pretty cat. It's a
He
nice.
is. He's really a sweet cat. His name is Houston, but they also call him Batman. Trying to make sure he doesn't get in my plants. These are basil plants right here.
Oh.
He keeps wanting to try and, I don't know, get in there, play with them, do his business. I don't know. So I made him a pot over there. Well, I actually have a plant that's halfway dead that's over there. I'm like, you can get in that plant all you want. I don't care, but don't get my basil plants, you know.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I mentioned to you before we started up that I'd been doing considerable reading this morning on um, how different people think. It was actually a question posed to Quora, um, and from that they went to, how do you think? How is it that you think, or whatever like that. And I mean, I've never seen this list of comments like were with that. But I mean, there were people who included um, videos and just really explained that the way they think, they know nobody else thinks that way, that they know. And and it's a real eye opener to me because um, I've just I, I I think a lot of what I deal with is a small town mentality. Growing up in a town of less than 5,000 people at the time, and I think my high school graduating class was 300 and
Right.
some, which is hardly anybody. I mean, it's like you pretty much know who everybody is in high school, which is kind
Yeah.
of amazing.
That's kind of how it was for me. I went to a Christian school, and I only had 54 people in my graduating class. Of course, we were in Indianapolis, so, I mean, everybody around us had hundreds of people in their classes, but ours was really small. So, yeah, we knew everybody. Heck, we knew everybody in our grade as well as the whole group of high school in our high school building. So I know what you're saying there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's been a very good thing for me that I've had the opportunity to really, really want to know why I have been the way that I have been, why I have responded the way that I have responded, why my life has gone the way that it has gone. I don't know if you remember. Well, you're a couple decades behind me, but when I graduated high school, maybe it was when I left for my first year away. This man wrote a book called The Way It's Supposed to Be, Spozed, and I have always held on to that title because I had this idea of how my life was supposed to be, and it's just not been that way at all. And it's because I wondered how I got so off track with myself that I have ended up, for example, on this mastermind and other masterminds that I've gotten involved with, and just the kind of people that that I talk with. I mean, it just means so much to me. To me, there is nothing like the Saturday morning mastermind, because I have been on other masterminds, and it is so nice to be able to, um, you know, just kind of be raw, hanging out there. It won't be so nice, I suppose, if ever there's somebody that we might call a troll or a hater or whatever that comes along and uh, lets us all know whatever they have to let us know. But I really do think that, like this verse says, being content with what you have is always best in the end. Someone has to risk, he says someone must risk, returning injury with kindness, or hostility will never turn to goodwill. And isn't that the truth? I mean, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to change it. And I think about how much kinder, gentler, I forget where this whole line comes from, but I'm just a different soul than, let's say, even 10 years ago, when I was so angry after being in bed for 7 months with a clinical depression, thinking, here all these people have their lives. I have lost everything for the third time, and and I don't get it. I mean, that sure makes you want to get it. That's for sure. I do wish we could hear Jason, because I know that his head must be bulging out. He's probably thinking, "Oh, I wish I could say something here right now."
Yeah, I love that picture that has shown up for him. I don't know what profile he logged in with, but it looks like he's wearing a bathrobe at his computer. That's awesome. I love that. That's a perfect
Yeah.
Saturday morning mastermind photo. We should all be sitting around in bathrobes.
Yeah, that's a good
Put
idea.
a towel on my head, or hair and rollers or something. I don't know. And well, this has been a good discussion, Karen, and I'm glad that we're able to do this, because I think we just grow so much more when I know I do. I know that I realize things that I do that I'm like, oh, no wonder I'm having that difficulty in my life. I'm doing that. I need to stop doing that, or I need to change my thoughts on how I'm reacting or whatever. We notice that we're doing things that we're just causing difficulty in our own lives. It's completely unnecessary. I I wanted to kind of read something out of this chapter. I gotta look for the part again. Um, I guess I'll just look through it and maybe post it in the group or something. But um, I don't know. I do need to jump off though now, because I do have stuff I have to do before I go to work, and I need to have errands I gotta run. So I love hanging out with you guys, and I'm so glad that we're able to do this. And um, but I understand. I don't know what we're going to study next, and whatever we end up studying, we may end up having more people jump with us, or some people leave. I have no idea. I never know what's going to happen, but whatever it is, it'll be fine. It'll all be just perfect.
Did you get Jason's chat message? I think the aspect of always being a giver is powerful.
Oh yeah, I think that. Oh, that's wonderful. That's right. Well, and I think that were you able to read the chapter? Wayne kind of talked
No.
a little bit. One thing we didn't even talk about was one aspect that Wayne discussed in here about, if we feel like if we don't have abundance in our lives, the reason why is because we're so focused on taking that we're not giving enough, because we should be like the Tao, which is always giving. And when we are more giving, then we receive more, and of course we have that idea in our head that, if we give everything away, we'll have nothing, right? Whether that's our own, like forgiveness, that that one, if it's always being kind to somebody who's hurtful, or if it's financial, or if it's our time, or whatever it is, we always feel like we're going to run out, or maybe we're going to lose out because we're giving everything away. But he's suggesting that the more that we give, the more that we will receive. And I don't know why we have such a hard time with that, or at least I do. I don't know why. But what's interesting to me is I found that it's easy to do in my job, to just work hard and do what needs to get done without really any expectations. And then even in my relationships, I feel like I can do that easier. But when it comes to like my financial and our, I guess it's mostly just financial, I feel like I'm not as good at doing that, which I don't know. It's crazy, right? I don't know what it is. I'm able to do it in some areas because it feels like it's beneficial somehow. I don't know. I feel like a lot of times I do things because I already know I'm going to get something back from it, whatever it is. I don't know. Like at my work, for example, I work in a specific department, but when it's time to close the store down, all departments have to be completed before we can go home, right? And so I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm going to go over here and work over here. I'm going to help this person. I'm going to help that person. I'm going to make sure they get this done, blah, blah, blah. And I'm all giving like that, and knowing that what I'm going to receive is getting out of here early, right? You know, but everybody else is like, well, that's not my job, so I'm not going to do it. You know, I'm just going to only do my thing. And yet they're making their own lives more difficult because of that, you know. And, but why I can't translate that onto the financial side of my life, I have no idea. But somehow.
I think that's interesting. Are you hearing an echo? Anyway, I think some of it is what we've seen people example for us. Because if you see things turn out for someone else, I think about my little grandmother. My father's mother was under 5 feet tall, and you know, as a child, you grow up pretty fast beyond that, and you're looking down at your grandmother, and so you know, it's just kind of a way of seeing her, which I realize was minimizing. I was minimizing her, you know, when I have missed her so much. And I realize, you know, how much she accomplished by just forging ahead and just, you know, just having her attitude and outlook towards things. And so when those things can apply for me, then I benefit. When I can't apply that, and I can't search out in my mind, in my experience, anybody else who exemplified that for me, then I have a harder time. It's like having to come up with, oh, well, Samantha said on Saturday morning that, you know, she does this for the reason of getting out early, and that's pretty good. I think I'll just work towards doing this because it'll help me to get out early. Yeah, I mean, you have to snatch a hold of something from somewhere.
I don't know. Maybe what I need to do then is well, like, because I guess I kind of look at things in a similar way when it comes to like my relationship with my husband, you know, because we don't always agree on everything, and you know, and all that. And is that what I'm going to get out of this is a happier relationship. You know, even if I don't want to give in, or I don't want to let go of my ego doing its thing, is that, but by giving in or giving forgiveness or giving whatever, is that I am going to live this happiness. I'm going to have this happy. That's what it was I wanted to read. Where was it? It was, okay. Okay, so in this verse, which has been so helpful to me personally, that's Wayne talking. You're asked to change the way you hold resentments following a difference of opinion or an outright quarrel. Now, what causes annoyance and anger after a dispute? The generic response would be laundry lists that detailed why the other person was wrong, how illogical and unreasonable they behave, concluding with something like, I have a right to be upset when my daughter, mother-in-law, ex-husband, boss, or whomever you're thinking of speaks to me this way. But if you're interested in living a Tao-filled life, and I kind of put happy life as a thing was what I wrote, it's imperative that you reverse this kind of thinking. Resentments don't come from the conduct of the other party in an altercation. No, they survive and thrive because you're unwilling to end that altercation with an offering of kindness, love, and authentic forgiveness. Someone must risk returning injury with kindness, or hostility with never to turn, or hostility will someone must risk returning injury with kindness, or hostility will never turn to goodwill. And, you know, so what I'm thinking is that I have to start thinking that way. I've kind of started thinking that way a little bit in my relationships, but if I think in the way of, okay, I want to live a happy life, and so therefore I'm going to give forgiveness, I'm going to be the person who is okay with whatever you want, you know, or whatever, I don't even know. I want to live a happy life, right? So I'm going to be selfish by saying I'm going to give, because ultimately I want to receive living a happy life. I want to be happy in our relationship. So I don't know. Maybe that's what we have to do.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting how he talks about the resentment, has nothing to do with the other person, really. I mean, it's you that's holding on to it and keeps putting up the laundry list, keeps going through it, keeps, calling somebody and saying, "Did you hear about how somebody treated me?" and all that kind of stuff. And it was like my experience with umbrage is I finally got it that if I took umbrage at something that you said and you never knew that there was anything upsetting or frustrating about it, and probably even I recognized it to the point that I wouldn't tell you because I'd be embarrassed and ashamed to tell you. Um, it's just ridiculous. I'm out there spinning around, in a miserable state, just as long as I can make myself spin, and it doesn't even entail the other person at that point. I just think that's something that we as humans just really need to understand. Just we really need to get. And a lot of times you can't tell a child about that. I mean, you were an exceptional person in that you got something, and possibly you could have gotten it if your mother had told you or your grandmother had told you or whatever. But for most of us, we have to go through uh, realizing I am causing my own pain.
Yeah, and I think that until we realize that, we can't make any real big changes in our lives. That's where it all starts from. And I don't know. I mean, I read a lot, as a young adult, but um, I don't think that I actually realized that specific part of it when I was a teenager. I think my whole thing with what I did realize was that everybody was so focused on themselves, they're not worried about me, so I don't have to worry about whether I'm impressing them. That part was, I don't know, that was all that it was, because I would go into the girls' bathroom and they're all prepping their hair and prepping their makeup and doing this and that and the other, and I'm like, God, that's so annoying. I hate doing that. I never did that at school, but I realized that's why they were doing it, is they're worried about what everybody else would think. I would primp my makeup and do my hair before I left for school, and if I got rained on, so be it. I didn't worry about it. But it wasn't like that until I realized everybody's also worried about what everybody else thinks so much they aren't even paying attention to what I'm doing. But this thing's about ready to end, Karen, so I think we'll wrap it up, and I'm going to at least cut the recording here. So everybody have a great, awesome, amazing Saturday, and click the links below to get on our Facebook group and jump in there, because we're going to be starting a new book here soon. I don't know what it's going to be, but you can find out more about that on our Facebook group, so there'll be a link below the video. Okay, bye for now, guys.
Love doing this with Samantha. Bye.